And how far do the wide receivers have to go to get where you want them to be?
Yeah, so I'd say solid. You know, he's been solid. He's been I think they've all been good at times. It's still obviously a small number of practices and number of plays to truly evaluate. I thought our entire staff as well as team felt like the wide receivers took a big jump in day 2 compared to day 1. And I know a lot of the coaches and players. Jay Reed actually spoke to the team after practice about it. So I thought that was a real positive. But it's just kind of a small pool right now to really base that off of. I'll have a better idea, a week from now. But so far solid, and obviously there's still some steps that need to be taken there for that entire room. Obviously that's been a big question mark for the media and some of the fans. I think the coaching staff and I think the players have I would say a good amount of confidence in what that room has the ability to do and the amount of work that they've put in with Bo and Drew all summer.
Over here on the right, Bob.
Hey, James, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm good. James, when you just look at your defensive end room and you get past Abdul and Deny, guys I know that have a chance to have some really big years for you, who are some of the guys behind them that you're excited about and can maybe take a step forward for you and you're counting on maybe in August and moving forward?
And you said Deny and Abdul?
Yeah. When you get past those two guys, obviously they're kind of known quantities. Behind them, who are the guys you're kind of excited about, and maybe who are the guys you're counting on to take another step in August?
Yeah, so first of all, I wouldn't even say behind them. Amin Vanover is a guy that I don't think enough people are talking about. We have a ton of confidence in Amin. And then I think the other guy that, and I get why, but a lot of people aren't talking about is Smith Vilbert. Smith Vilbert is a guy that we have a lot of confidence in as an organization and as a program. He's missed obviously a lot of football, so you guys haven't had a chance to see him the way we have. But you talk about big, strong, physical, experienced, mature. So that gives us really 3 defensive ends that have played a ton of football in my mind in terms of games and practice with Vanover, Deny, and Vilbert. And then you got Carter, who's new to the position but still has played a ton of football. And then we got Mason Robinson, who's going into year 2 in the program that we're going to need for him to take a significant step for us. And then after that, there's a bunch of guys, whether it's Mopoye, whether it's Williams, whether it's Mayer, whether it is Granville. There's other guys kind of in the mix there. But I would say for us, you got Vanover, Carter, Deny, Vilbert, Mopoye, and Mason Robinson, probably the 6 guys that we know the most about right now, if that makes sense.
Middle left, Todd.
Hey, Coach. How you doing today?
Good. How are you?
Good. Generally speaking, do you see more progress in the guys from spring practice to camp physically or mentally? And the ones that kind of jump off the page maybe mentally, does it show itself in command of the playbook or the way that they communicate with their teammates or just the way they carry themselves confidence-wise? Or are there any guys that kind of fit that mold so far that you've seen?
Just to be clear, compared to what?
No, just what they looked like, an individual from the spring to now. Whether the physically you can kind of see them, the differences, but mentally, how do you see guys progressing? Do you generally see more physical or mental progress? And mentally,
I got you.
How
Okay.
do you see it?
Yeah, I think it's probably both. Maybe not the answer that you want, but probably both. I mean, you see changes. A guy that right away to me when we went out on the field on the first day was Tamir. Tamir looked different. He really looked good. You noticed that right away. I think everybody kind of had noticed Rojas already. Obviously, the numbers that have been reported, and just looking at him, he obviously looks different as well. Another guy that a lot of people aren't talking about, but we're excited about, that has really kind of changed his body as well is Boyer. I want to say Boyer's put on 35, 40 pounds and is really doing some nice things. But I would say that's probably the biggest change in terms of physical appearance. And then in terms of mentally, obviously, is a big jump at the quarterback position. Grunk is really doing some nice things. We think he's got a very, very bright future, and is really taking a step. I think Jackson Smolik has been really impressive in terms of what he's been able to do mentally. Maximizing what he's able to do right now, that's been impressive as well. But I think it's just a combination. Some guys have a lot of room for growth mentally. Some guys have a lot of room for growth physically. But there's a few examples.
On the right, Tyler.
Hey, James, how are you?
Good, Tyler. How are you?
Good. You mentioned Max Granville as one of those guys that you're looking to learn more about. We all are. Can you kind of peel back the curtain as much as you're comfortable with doing, and when you realized it was a possibility he could be on this roster, and kind of the final moments with him and his family where this was the outcome, and what you can realistically expect from a freshman who didn't get here until the final week of July?
Yeah, he's already flashed in the first 2 days. Athletic, quick, a lot of things you saw on the high school tape, but you don't know if those things are going to show up when they get here. But that's already happened. He also tested really well with our baseline testing with Coach Losi and that staff soon as he was cleared and able to do that. In terms of the process, we really kind of had no idea until really very late in the process that this was even something they were thinking about. And then there's one thing to be thinking about, there's another thing to actually be able to do it. I think he was taking summer classes to be able to ensure the fact that he'd be able to come at mid-semester. And then I think once he got the classes done and realized he could qualify now and graduate now, that they brought the option up to us. And I think that also triggered to us that they're very serious about Penn State, because they're having these types of conversations with us. But it was pretty late in the process. So then there was a ton of work that had to happen for him in terms of the application process and all that, for us in terms of getting all that documentation, and then also getting him here. Like, I think the same weekend his brother got married, so they had the wedding, and then we're driving here. So there was a lot of stuff that we had to get done in a short period of time. And because of the wedding, it's not like he could even come a couple days early, like was getting here right at the last minute. But so far, first impression, really good. But obviously there's a big difference between running around, in shorts and a t-shirt than there is in full pads. So we'll see that today. We'll have a better idea today.
In the back, Allie.
Hey, Coach, how are you?
Hey, Allie.
Jaywan and Ty talked at the end of last season about getting the ball in the hands of the best players, regardless of who that was. How does Coach K subscribe to that mentality, and how are you anticipating seeing that play out with guys like Drew and Bo, Nick and Katron, kind of that third-year class of guys? How do you think Coach K is going to handle just the number of offensive guys he has?
Yeah, so, I think really you can kind of take two different points right here, talking points from a conversation standpoint. Is explosive plays, to me, goes hand in hand with getting your best players the ball. I felt like, the last couple games of the year, you saw a significant change there. So obviously with that kind of went through the interview process. That was a big part of the interview process, is production of explosive plays and the data to back it up, not just saying, in an interview, I want to be explosive, the data to back it up. But then also philosophically, how are you going to get your best players the ball? How are you going to get them touches? How are you going to get them touches early in the game? Those types of things was a big part of it. And then again, it's one thing to talk about those things in the process. It's another thing to go watch the film. It's another thing to study the data and make sure that those things are happening. Sometimes easier said than done, depending on the position the guy plays. But so far so good, and been a ton of discussions in the off season about that. And then I think, from him being able to watch us, during bowl prep, and then winter workouts, and then spring ball and all these types of things, I think he's got a pretty good idea of the guys we have, the weapons we have, the experience we have. And then I think the other thing we're going to have to do back to the development of some of these positions, is hopefully by game 3, we feel like there's other guys that you guys are all talking about, our best players, and that we're talking about in terms of people we have to get more touches to.
Over here on the right and in the front, John.
James, how are you?
Hey, John.
How many guys do you plan on playing at corner this fall, and who is standing out right now as potential starters at that position?
Yeah, Terry's the model. I mean, Terry's the model in terms of recruiting and in terms of development. You would say typically when you have a year where you essentially lost 2 corners to the NFL, that you would feel like that was a big question mark going into the season and feel like that was an area where maybe you had some concerns. But we actually feel like that position from top to bottom could be better this year athletically. Now, don't misinterpret what I'm saying. They still got to do it on game day, and obviously when you've lost the amount of production that we've lost at that position, we understand that. But in terms of I'd say 7 guys that went through spring ball and went through summer and now are in training camp, we feel really good about those 7 guys, and specifically 6 guys, 3 deep on either side. Right now, it's hard to really say. Cam Miller's got the most experience here at Penn State. You guys know how we feel about AC, Davian Collins, and what he's been able to do all offseason. Been a ton of conversation, maybe the most improved guy on our roster since the end of the season. Kimber's come in and really developed and changed his body in our strength and conditioning program and has played a lot of football in a very good conference. Harris, there's just a lot of guys that we feel good about. Tracy, who, we got a ton of confidence in, and Washington, who we got a ton of confidence in. And all those guys have, for the most part, either played, whether it's played here or played at other places. So Terry just does a really good job in terms of rebuilding and retooling that position. And I don't think it's a position that as coaches, we have a ton of concerns about. Now, to answer your question, I just don't know. I don't have enough practices to feel like it's these guys. I think we got a group of players that we feel really good about. Now, somebody's got to separate themselves and be the guy, or we're going to be rotating a lot of high-quality players that we feel good about.
Back left, Andrew.
Hey, Coach. You guys are putting in, obviously, a new offense with Coach Kotelnicki. Can you walk us through what the process of installing an offense looks like, and where are you on that timeline, and are you happy where you're at on that timeline?
Yeah, and I think you guys have heard me say this before. We're really not in a position in year 11 in the program to start all over. We have not done that. So, and I think you guys have heard me say this before. So, in terms of all 3 coordinators were hired based on what they had done well in their careers, but also what are you able to do and how comfortable are you, honestly, comfortable keeping the same and what needs to change. I would say on offense there's probably more change than on defense and special teams, but probably not as much as you guys would think. So I think Andy's done a really good job of that. That takes a ton of confidence. That takes a ton of intelligence. And I think it also takes enough experience that you feel like you're able to do that. And again, that's so that we don't have 50 players learning a completely new system. We have, kind of a blend. Combination of one coordinator and then the things that need to change. So I think we're in a good spot there. I think some of the rule changes over the last couple of years that allow you to have essentially OTAs in the offseason where you're actually able to coach, that's helped. Because I think in the old days when you hired a new coordinator and you could do no coaching in football when other sports could, that those changes are more significant. It's less significant now because you get spring ball, you get summer OTAs, and we've been able to get a ton of done. So I think we're in a pretty good spot. I think most importantly, I think the players are confident with what we're doing and how we're doing it.
Back right, Johnny.
Hey, James, how are you?
Hey, Johnny.
From the end of last season till now, how would you assess the growth that Drew has kind of underwent, both on the field and then also in the Lash building, working with Andy and working with Danny?
Yeah, I would really say the whole group. Drew, Bo, Grunk, Smolik. I've been as impressed with Smolik's growth and how he's handled this situation as anybody. I think the dialogue is really good. I typically sit in the quarterback meetings, and I think the dialogue and discussions are really good. I think Andy, with 19 years of experience as a play caller, and really being able to float, which is really what he wanted to do coming here, to be able to float as an offensive coordinator, almost like a lot of the NFL organizations do, and then have someone like Danny. Even before the rule changes as a GA, Andy was able to get comfortable with Danny, and I think that helped as well. But the dialogue in that room has been really good. I think the players got a ton of respect for Danny as a former player that's walked in their shoes. And I think we have a system now that is going to put not only our best players in position to be successful, but I think Andy's background as a former line coach, I think helps too, because typically on offense, everything you're doing is about how do you make things as challenging on the defense as possible, obviously, but also how do you limit the complication of things for your O-line and for your quarterback. You want to try to keep things as simple for those two positions as you possibly can in two positions that aren't very simplistic. And I think he's done a really good job of that. Sometimes I think coaches say that because that's coaching 101 interview process and things like that. But the execution of that, I think Andy's done a really good job. Again, experience matters. 19 years as a play caller, that you've learned not only things that have worked, but things that you would do differently. That experience really counts. So Drew obviously has been able to lean into Danny, has been able to lean into Andy, but I also think some of the things systematically that we're going to do, and I would say even some of these things we're going to do, you guys are going to look at and say, I don't know if that's something I would imagine Drew doing, but by him doing just enough of it opens up and creates opportunities for other things in our offense and makes us difficult to defend. So I think it's really good. I think it's been really good. It's interesting though, kind of to your question too. When you watch just the Kansas film from the last 2 years, Bo was pretty excited. But when you look at over 19 years, Buffalo, different types of quarterbacks, and just the overall knowledge of offense, there's a reason for all those guys in that room to be excited.
Up front, Neil.
Hey, James.
Hey, Neil.
A new era of college football with a playoff. I wonder if that affects at all your approach to an overall season, and also having a tough road opener. How does that change or affect preparation?
Yes, sir. I would say the first thing is the length of this season. I think you guys know we've always talked about trying to create depth was always important playing in a conference like the Big Ten. So that was philosophically something that we've always believed in, but I think your point is a good one. It's magnified now, right? You have the potential of 17 games. So how are you going to do that? I think that coupled with some of the rule changes over the last couple of years where you can play in 4 games, save your red shirt, but then you also get to be able to play in all of the postseason games and not burn your red shirt. I think that's that factors into strategy and how we do these things. And then, just making sure we're doing a really good job of rotating and playing guys for the fourth quarter, for late in the season, and now a playoff run, all those types of things. So I guess to answer your question, it's not really dissimilar to what we've done in the past. I just think it's heightened, if that makes sense. And then your other part of your question was what again? Opening up West Virginia. Fortunately, we've done a decent amount of that. Going to Auburn, we opened, I think, at Auburn.
Purdue in 2000.
Yeah, I know it was Purdue.
Wisconsin. We've opened at Wisconsin.
Yeah, what game of the season was Auburn when we went to Auburn?
Game 3.
It wasn't first game. It was game three. Excuse me. Game 3. Excuse me. But Purdue is a great example going on the road. We've done a few of these things before. I think has been helpful for us. And I think it gets everybody's kind of attention. I have probably more respect for West Virginia than anybody just because I played there so many times, and I know what Mountaineer football means to the state of West Virginia. I know what that environment's going to be like. Played there a ton of times. And in some ways, there's a geographic, component to this as well. There's some historical factors there as well in terms of, being a bordering state or however you want to describe it. So I think it's going to be a great game. I think it's going to be a great environment. And then on top of that, the way they ended their season, right? I think they ended up winning 9 games, and the quarterback ended up playing really well and finished the season on a real high note. So they got a ton of confidence coming into this year because of that.
In the middle, Max.
Hey, James.
I started getting nervous about geography, like when I said bordering state. But
no, I think you got that one right.
I was a little concerned.
Yeah.
East Stroudsburg psychology.
When we talked in June, you mentioned that there wasn't anybody that had stood out enough to be named a captain yet to this point. I'm just curious, with the start of fall camp, where you feel the leadership of your team's at.
Yeah, we feel good about it. We typically, I think, for most of the people in the room that have been covering us for a while, we typically wait on that again, unless there's just an obvious person that everybody has identified, players most importantly and staff, that you feel like going into the summer, this person has separated themselves and everybody views them as such, and you want to name them to have that leadership going into the summer. There's also the aspect of holding it as long as possible, that then there's multiple guys that are working their tails off to become leaders on our team. And the reality is, when you're talking about a team of 125 or whatever the number may be, we're going to need more leadership than just the captains. So I think we're in a good spot there. I see this team being more vocal. Myself and Chuck Losey and Coach Palco spent a ton of time talking about this. I see these guys being more vocal in challenging their teammates, holding their teammates accountable. I think those things have been pretty evident in the summer workouts and so far in camp. So I think we're in a good place, but we're going to need it. We're going to need a ton of it. And we'll probably hear, probably in the next 2 weeks, we'll probably name captains. But then we're going to need more leadership than just those guys too.
In the middle, Audrey.
Hey, Audrey.
Sorry, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Just kind of a little housekeeping thing. Is Danny O'Brien still a GA? I mean, obviously the rules change doesn't matter, but is he still a GA or not?
So if the rule changes don't matter, then why?
Well, because he was listed on the website as a GA. I'm just genuinely curious if he still is or not.
Sometimes you guys ask me questions, and I can't really answer them yet.
Okay.
You guys follow our websites much closer than I do. But right now he is a GA. But to your point, Audrey, which I think is a fair one, there's really no difference anymore with the rule change between a GA and an analyst we had Danny. That's one of the reasons why this worked out well is we had a guy that's still qualified to be a GA because the rules say you have to be within 7 years of either graduating school or playing. So we felt like he had the experience and the knowledge to serve that role, but still fell under the GA rules where if he was an analyst, he wouldn't be able to coach. So it ended up working out really well. But now with the rule change, it doesn't matter. So now it comes down to master's degree. Do you want to get a master's degree? Do you want that time during the season to take classes? But right now, he is currently a graduate assistant. And for a number of reasons, that's probably as far I can go with answering this question at this time.
We got time for one more in the back, Shane.
Hey, Coach.
Hey, Shane.
You have another kicking competition this year. Sander obviously won that competition last year, and then things happened against West Virginia. How do you see him coming into this year in that competition overall?
So I probably shouldn't say this because this will skew the numbers. But first of all, I love the question on specialists. I was with the specialists just a minute ago. They have an over-under going every year based on how many of you will actually talk to them on media day. They have a 10 push-up wager going on. I'm not going to tell you what the number is. But back to your question. It's been really good, and I think the competition is really important. Having 3 guys there, 2 of which that have kicked in college games, I think is really important. A young, exciting player that has really done a nice job in practice. But as we all know, I don't care what position it is, sometimes there's a difference between practice and games. So the game reps carry a lot of weight for us. I think if it's close between 2 guys at the end of training camp and we're talking about naming a starter, you probably give the edge to the guy that has game experience to go with someone that has no game experience. Then the competition, the gap needs to be significant enough to make up for that. But I just think the competition is important. I think sometimes at those positions, there's not the same level of competition maybe there is for the defensive end or the corner position, and we've tried to create that as much as we can. So Sanders grown a lot and learned from that experience. In terms of just pure talent of kicking the ball, he's impressive. I mean, he's very, very impressive. So we'll see how this plays out, but the competition has been really good. But I think the game experience could and will factor into the decision process. Did I answer your question? Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, Coach. We'll have Coach Allen next.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Get started with questions for Coach Allen. Please raise your hand. We'll take a mic to you. Let's start with Tyler in the back here, over here on the right.
Hey, Tom, how are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. I just want to follow up on something I asked James about with Max Granville joining the roster so late. What were your impressions of him as a prospect, looking longer term, maybe this summer, this spring, versus now what you have in front of you on campus and the viability of him taking a role as a freshman?
Yeah, I tell you, it was one of those things where when you begin the process, this wasn't what we were thinking would happen. We was thinking about being a mid-year enrollee once he concluded his senior season. And then, when that started to transpire, when it was brought up, it was like, okay. So you start going from thinking about a guy that's going to be here a year from now to a guy that could be here potentially in the fall, which is how it kind of started. And we were very excited about his athleticism. On film, it flashes. Then you start to get to know the person and the family, and you see the fit to our program. To a guy that's going to come here and care about the things that we care about and just do the little things the right way, where you feel like he's just come in and really, really develop because of everything that he has, in this program. And so now that we got him here, he hasn't been here very long, but you test him, and he tested out really, really well, kind of you expect him to, with his track background and his athleticism coming off the edge. And so I really have high expectations for Max, and I feel like that he's a guy that has really, really good twitch. Great first step quickness, does a lot of things naturally. Now we've seen him in practice only for a couple of days. We haven't had pads on yet. Those will go on today. But you can tell quite a bit about a guy's feel for the game. Even though he's a guy that will get bigger and stronger, he still has a good understanding fundamentally with his handwork and his footwork and placement of his hands, in the run game, going against tight ends. And so I think rushing the passer is kind of what he does best and what he does naturally. But obviously he'll become a complete player. But I tell you what, I'm super excited about him. Thrilled to have him here. When we realized he was going to be here, which was definitely a surprise, was really kind of a bonus for us, 2024.
In the front, Rich.
Hi, Tom. With James last week saying that Abdul's going to play both end and linebacker, how do you juggle his practice time? How has he looked in these two practices at end? And what factors will you weigh in determining where he will play?
Yeah, I think that's a week-to-week decision. I think as we've said, even the first couple practices has been focused on defensive end throughout the spring and the summer. He obviously knows how to play, linebacker in our system at a pretty high level. And so I think that it'll be a game plan decision that we feel like we can maximize, his skill set in those situations. And obviously just, as he moves forward with our roster, the depth in his position and where we feel that all stacks up. So obviously he's a difference maker type guy. So you want him to be able to have multiple skill sets that he can impact the game at different positions. And obviously when we get into our third downs, there'll be things he'll do already that will have things he's done in the past at the linebacker position as well. So I feel like that's nothing but an asset to us, and we'll continue to balance that all out and allow him to be able to be, totally prepared for game day, whatever that role might be.
In the front here, Seth.
Hey, Tom. James talked a little bit about how this season could potentially go, 17 games. With your kind of high-energy style of coaching, how do you think that fits into what could, end up being maybe a very long season?
Well, I just think that there's a consistency that you must have. You can't grow weary of doing the little things the right way every day, over and over and over again. And I think, I like to say it, embracing the boredom of consistency, whatever that might look like and whatever that's fundamental work, how you bring your energy every day. And to me, it doesn't really matter how many games we play. I'm going to bring that same energy and intensity every single week. But I do think in terms of how we practice and how we prepare our team, you have to understand the big picture of it all and understand where you're at as a coach and how you bring that. So I'm not necessarily expecting your guys to be on an emotional high every day of practice. In terms of that, you got to learn how to just be consistently good every single day. When your body feels a certain way and then when your body doesn't feel a certain way. And so it's more about your mindset and how you are thinking and not how you're feeling. And so to me, that's really the approach I take. And so we got to be consistent. And to me, no matter who we play, no matter what week of the season it is, there has to be a standard of expectation that this is how Penn State plays defense, period. No matter the game, no matter the week of the season, no matter the circumstances.
On the right, Daniel.
Hey, Tom, how are you?
Good, how are you doing?
Doing well. James said that there are 6 or 7 cornerbacks that he would feel comfortable playing right now. For you, how have you seen that room come along? And then personally, what's your personal philosophy on rotating players, using multiple cornerbacks at one spot throughout a game?
Yeah, so first of all, it was a position when I was, first hired that we were concerned about. Just losing 3 guys from that position, to the NFL, which is an obvious, hole to fill. Knew we had some talented young players, and just didn't know how they were going to develop. And so that became a major focus. Obviously, brought in two transfers mid-year that were have turned out to be tremendous, assets to our program in so many different ways. And so that room has turned into a question mark, into possibly one of our strengths of our whole defense. And so I love having that depth there. You think about the way the game is played now, and the way we want to be able to play guys that can cover and do multiple things, not just in man, but also in a lot of different zone principles that we want to be able to implement as well. So depth at that position is critical, and I'm a big believer in playing lots of guys. I've been that way my whole career. Want to have a good rotation, so you're able to be at your very, very best at the end of the game, and then now also be at the end of a season, which could be a very long season. That's the expectation that it's going to be a long season. So, but I think the more guys you can play, the more depth you're going to create, and then it's whether third down package, second pass packages that we have, guys that can cover, guys that can tackle. That's one thing I think Coach Terry Smith's done a phenomenal job, is building a room full of guys that have the traits you're looking for. The speed, the twitch, the ability to make plays in space defensively, the tackle, have a physical, mental toughness to them that group has. And so super excited about that group and plan to play a bunch of them.
In the middle, Max.
Hey, Tom, how you doing? Right here.
Hey, Max, how you doing?
I'm good. Through spring ball and now going into the fall, it's the first time you've been able to have the green dot on defense. How much does that change what you're able to do just on the field?
Yeah, it's different, and so I carry the radio around, and give the call to the Mike linebacker, and that's who right now is wearing the green dot. We could have different guys wearing it in different situations, but at the same time, it's an adjustment. But I think it's another step in the direction of allowing us to maximize technology. I think the bigger game day adjustment is probably going to be the iPads on the sideline, but I think the green dot, and how we utilize it, it's going to be a lot. It's going to be dependent upon the offensive style and tempo and what they choose to do with the green dot. Do they huddle? Do they not? Do they use to do different mechanisms to maximize things? And so definitely, so what we're in the process of doing right now is to be able to have multiple ways of getting our calls into the defense, but the green dot is a constant with our guys. And so even when you play and practice on different fields and different guys we're trying to get reps with, you're trying to go through and maximize that process. So it's kind of a fascinating thing for me. I've not called a defense with the helmet communication, being a college coach my whole career in high school. So it's new for me as well. I did a lot of conversations with NFL guys that I know, NFL players that I've coached in college and now wear it in the NFL, and how they, can maximize it. What do they want to hear? What they don't want to hear? How can I really help them the most? And so it's been a good learning process for me throughout the spring, over the summer, and now into 2 days into camp. So I think it's going to be an asset to us. I think it's going to allow us to really, be more efficient in what we're doing, and me to be able to help our linebackers give them a couple keys before the microphone shuts off.
In the front, Greg.
Coach, how you doing? When you look at your defensive tackle group, you have a lot of returning guys there. Where do you feel like, as they get ready to put the pads on, that group is, and who are you looking at as some of the better guys, or the more productive guys out of that group?
Well, I tell you what, when oftentimes you talk about the ends here, and rightly so, but I tell you, I've been impressed with the inside guys, and Zane Durant to me kind of jumps out. Devon at least jumps out to me. Those two guys, and that hasn't really, when you practice without pads on, it's hard to kind of tell anything at this point. But we know what they can do. I've coached against them and understand the level. And I just, even watching Devon in the bowl game and the level that he played at, to me, that's what he needs to be doing every single week. And so Keziah, Izzard to me is another one that's tremendously talented. Really big physical guy, and Akeem Beamon, another one that can really do a lot of different things. And I could go on. That's a deep group. It really is. And so I think the bottom line is that you can't have enough big physical guys that can have good lateral movement as well. And we're not a team that just sits there. We're going to be very aggressive and attacking in our style. So they're a huge part of what we want to do, and it allows us to be able to do a great job. I just think that all the positions are going to play a huge role in this, but it always starts up front to me, and be able to stop the run and then pressure the quarterback, and I expect those guys to be a big part of that.
We got time for one more. Front right, Mark.
Tom, when we talked to Dex earlier this summer, he mentioned Zeki as a starter along with KJ and Jalen. I mean, do you view it that way? And can you talk about the versatility of those safeties and what you can do with them?
Yeah, I think those three young men are as good a three safeties that you're going to have in the country, and very versatile. You can, sometimes there's going to be different packages we'll be in where they'll, could all be in the game or just two of them in the game, but that rotation will be very important to us, and so having those three guys, and Zacky's probably made the biggest growth, from last year to this year. He's had a tremendous offseason, even if you think from spring ball to even watching these first couple clips of our first couple practices here of this, fall camp. I mean, it's just a lot of just pride. KJ and Jay Reed just have set the tone for that room, and they just make sure everything's right. They truly run the defense. I used to I put that on the back, which I still do, but now I got another group of guys that take that same mindset. So I think that in today's game, the way the offenses have evolved and the way they spread the field out, and the teams we've added from the West Coast, and with Wisconsin going to the air raid offense, just the way the Big Ten has changed here in the last few years is going to be very necessary for us to be able to match that. And so having multiple guys at the safety position is going to be, got to have guys that are athletic, that can play in space and make tackles in space. And so I think those three guys all fit the bill, and they all have good size to them. They all can run, and they all have a lot of, I would consider all three of them very high football IQ guys. So I'm excited about that room.
Thank you very much, Tom.
Appreciate
we'll have Andy next.
Awesome. Have a great day. We are.
Not today. Good to see y'all. Hope you had a great summer.
Please raise your hand. We'll take a mic to you. Who has a mic there? No, we'll start with Mike Gross here in the middle. Get a mic to Mike right here.
Mic to Mike. Mike. Can I drink this, or is this just display?
That's for you to drink.
Okay.
Okay, let me get my equipment working.
Yes. Is this, sure?
No, I
Okay.
just brought that over today.
This is a pop top. All right, let's go.
Hi, Andy. One thing we've heard James say a lot lately, and even some of the staff and some of the players have said, is last year we got away from getting the ball in the hands of the best players. In your experience, how does that happen, and from what how can that happen? And from your looking at film and stuff, how did it happen here?
I can't speak to the past as much. You know what I mean? I'm not as familiar with the process. I can speak a little bit about maybe the process to getting the ball to your best players. I think first and the most important step is identifying them. Sometimes there are very clear-cut, hey, this is a dude. Other times, reps and practice and things of that nature, it starts to unveil itself a little bit. So the identification process is really important. How we practice, the number of reps that we get allow us to feel really good about it because we challenge our guys, the evaluation process. As a matter of fact, I just say, here's how you get in the field. And the first thing is, to be able to consistently do what we're doing out in practice. And if you can't do it over and over again, then that's the best indicator of how you'll do it. So it starts there with the identification, then figure out who those people are and what their skill sets are, right? What are their capabilities and what are their limitations? And then put them in position to do what they're capable of. And I know that sounds like, yeah, hey, thanks, but I mean, those are two really critical steps, or three really critical steps, and that you have to really, really reflect on a daily basis about what that looks like within your offense. And then, just maybe holistically speaking, you have to make sure that you're probably flexible enough on offense that however you identify those best players, maybe it's a running back, quarterback, a tight end, whatever it is, okay, what parts of our offense need to grow and expand because this individual deserves more touches, if you will.
In the middle, Max.
Hey, Andy. How are you?
Great. How are you?
Doing well. Asked Tom the same thing, but your first chance to have the in-helmet microphones, who's wearing them for your offense, and what's the experience been like for you?
Yeah, I'd be curious if anybody across the country on offense has someone other than quarterbacks wearing it. If anyone finds that answer, email him. It's been awesome. It's good to be able to have a direct line of communication to him and understand the little minute coaching points that you might make before a play. I think the challenge is, as coaches, is that you're not giving too much, right? You're talking too much to the quarterback. You're giving them, the play that we're going to run and why we're going to run it, and trusting that we've trained him the right way through the months and weeks that we get to prepare him. So it's been awesome. It's really good. We spend a lot less time worrying about how I communicate from the press box to the sideline to the field. It's a very direct line. Obviously, you still need to have backups, things of that nature for if that communication ever breaks down. But we spend a lot of time, the NFL's been doing it for a long time, so we spend a lot of time talking to people who've done that there or been quarterbacks at that level and their experience. So it's been cool. I like it.
Over here on the right, Bob.
Andy, how you doing?
Great.
I know you're a guy that knows a lot about the interior offensive line position.
Can we just stop for a second? You're wearing a Buc-ee's hat.
There it is again.
You know what I'm saying?
It follows me everywhere.
I don't, you're not supposed to do that, I heard.
I heard that's from somebody else. I can't place his name, but I think it was James.
Did he say it too?
Yeah. You want to go to Buc-ee's? We can do it.
I've been to Buc-ee's.
Here.
I understand. I appreciate it.
All right.
But, okay, I'm sorry.
It's all right. I'm looking forward to it. You know offensive line football better than most, I think, from your background. Penn State's had two really good centers before this year in Juice and Hunter Norstead. What can you tell us, and what have been your impressions of Nick Dawkins, who I think you guys kind of maybe expect to be that guy in the middle?
Yeah, so we have a couple guys on the interior that have done a really good job. Nick has been taking most of the reps there. Venga's been snapping the ball. Sal has been doing it, and then Ruli. Those guys have been snapping on a consistent basis for us. And Coach Trout's done a great job of working with them and kind of getting them squared away. I think when you look at football at most levels, it really is hard to feel like you got 15 linemen that are ready to play. And it's like if you look at the NFL, they got 7 or 8 guys on the roster, and then they have those three other guys need to be swing guys. But specifically to Dawkins, since you asked about him, he has done a fantastic job. And I will say this about Nick Dawkins. He is one of a kind. And I have coached long enough to know when you're interacting with a special person that's in their early 20s or late teens, and he is a special one. He is, if you guys ever get a chance to interact with him, his maturity, his authenticity, it just screams when you interact with him. And I tell our staff, I said, we can never take for granted the kind of leader in person he is because he is rare. And because of that, you anticipate a guy like that being successful. You really, really do, because he has those characteristics.
On the right, Tyler.
Hey, Andy, thanks for the time today. Staying on the offensive line, you now have Drew Shelton back in the fold. You didn't have him your first 15 practices as the offensive coordinator here. So what are you seeing from Drew early on, and how are you managing, along with Phil, those 2 tackle spots where you've got to replace guys who performed at a very high level?
Okay, well, I'll tell you first that, even when individuals are hurt, you still can develop an impression of them. And Drew, as he, didn't go through spring and he's rehabbing, it's really fun to watch how he still stayed engaged and active in the whole process of learning. Either it might be a walkthrough or a meeting, and he handled that awesome, really, really well. So you could tell that he was going to approach the position the right way. But he's had a really good camp. Today's the first day with pads on, but he's done a good job. We got really high expectations for him. And then Javen has done great okay, at the tackle spot. And when I say this, we're really kind of cross-training all of our guys, so I don't get so stuck in onto who's the left and who's the right, because we really want to make sure that we develop depth and diversity for them. And then Donka and Rooch, the 4 guys that have been taking a lot of reps throughout fall camp and in the summer, trying to diversify them and be able to have different sides and flip. Trout's done, again, just like what I said with the centers, done a good job of managing, because there's a balancing act with the O-line that I really respect, how Coach Trout and Coach Leonard and Quisert have all, they've done a good job of still making sure that they're mastering something, right? So like Drew is mastering left tackle, Javen's mastering left tackle, but they're getting enough reps at the other side that as the season unfolds and the pieces start to have to move for whatever reason, it's not like we're starting all over brand new, and we have some really good answers and some evidence to demonstrate that they can or can't do something.
In the front right here, Greg.
Coach, as you guys get ready to put the pads on today, what have you liked about what you've seen from the receivers so far, and what do you want to see from them moving through the rest of camp?
They had a great practice the other day, like their competitiveness, right? We kind of talked as an offense, as a matter of fact, just this morning about how, what does it look like to compete out there, okay? And even if someone who doesn't know anything about wide receiver play, the ability to dictate the depth and the width of routes, to go take the ball, right? Not have those things dictated to you, not have a defensive back tell you where the route has to be run and how wide or how deep, but to push and fight and the physicality that even happens within route running. And especially like our defense, we've got a great secondary, and then as aggressive and as physical as they will play for our receivers to make sure they go out there and match that. So I've seen those things. I've seen the commitment through spring and summer to develop their trade, their craft, and I'm excited for that group as we go into spring. Today will be a great day to see with the pads on.
In the back center, Shane.
Hey, Coach. You have a chance to work with Nick Singleton and Katron Allen. How excited are you to work with that group, and how does having 2 kind of number 1 caliber running backs kind of unlock that creativity for you?
Well, in that room especially, you always want to feel like you got a group of guys that are able to perform at a high level, and those 2 names are very obvious. Going in, I'll tell you, Cam Wallace had a really good fall camp. Quentin Martin, showed up in January, and he has been really, really good. Those 4 guys who have been around, they're developed, because I'm bringing up Cam and Q because, those guys have to develop and grow, right? And so to see Nick and Fat and how they have, how they grow and how they're still improving. Like Coach Sider just said it the other day. He's like, it's really good for the Quentin Martins and the Cam Wallaces of the world to recognize that Nick Singleton, and as committed as he is to everything he's doing, and Katron, that they're still getting better. There's improvement that they're making through spring and fall camp, and they're understanding, and they're trying to diversify themselves. So you have this really competitive room. But then to those 2 individually, my challenge to them has been, let's diversify ourselves. Let's figure out ways that you can touch the ball without just having to take a handoff. And I think they've done a really, really good job of that, embracing maybe the mental side of things and the technique side of things that needs to occur.
We got time for one more. In the middle, up front, Seth.
Hey, Andy. Right here. There you go. James talked about the question mark that surrounds the receivers. Just, wondering your relationship with Marcus Hagans, how has that been throughout this process? How is he dealing with that pressure? And also the addition of Mark Dupois, how has that helped in that regard?
Well, when you're talking about the relationships with the staff, and I guess I would share this about all of them, I think it's really important that they understand that whatever challenges, obstacles, teaching, coaching, mentoring that they have to do within their position rooms, like I'm there to help. So if there's an issue, that issue is my issue just as much as it is theirs. And it's not a finger point. It's never it's your guys that aren't doing this, or it's your guys that are, right? They're our guys, right? You know what I mean? So collectively, everyone has to understand that it's our football team, right? You know what I mean? We don't get to all of a sudden just decide when it's not going good that you can point the finger and say, well, you got to get your guys right, right? And then all of a sudden they score a touchdown, and our guys did great. It can't work like that. I think it starts there, specifically to the receiver room. So Dupe, Hagans and David Parker are the 3 guys that are working in that room. I think they're doing a fantastic job of mentoring and challenging those guys to grow and being teachers, right? And everything that you think about being a good teacher, those guys are embodying and those guys are doing. It's a huge credit to them. I think the receiver room has developed a ton. The receivers have a great relationship with them, and I think they recognize, one of Coach Franklin's goals is as a team is that we're incredibly connected, right? And that we are truly a team. And I think that starts, because you brought up the relationship with the coach, I think that starts in staff rooms, and then it goes into the players. So player to player, coach to coach, coach to player, player to coach, right? I think that stuff's all happening, which is where growth can happen the most.
Thank you very much, Andy. We'll have Justin next.
That was quick. That was easy. Good. Guys, have a good day.
They get 50 more. In the middle, go ahead.
Justin, welcome back to Pennsylvania.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Could you tell me a little about your journey and the influence? Obviously Route 45 isn't too far down the road here. For us today, it took less than an hour. For you, it took about 25 years.
Yep.
The influences that Tom Gadd, Dave Legg, and Dave Kotulski had in your days as a player and now as a coach.
Yeah, man, that's you did your research. Impressive. Those are three of my guys. Starting with Coach Gadd. Coach Gadd was my head coach at Bucknell. His claim to fame was the fire ant defense at South Carolina in the 80s. Had one of the best defenses in the country in SEC for multiple years, and I had the opportunity to play for him as a defensive player. And I learned about toughness. I learned about grit. I learned about fundamentals. My time at Bucknell was the most successful in the history of the program, and that's because of Coach Gadd. So I learned a lot from him and miss him. He passed away way too early from cancer, but certainly a huge impact on my life and my coaching career. And then Coach Kodo, Coach Kotulski, and Coach Legg, two of my mentors that have helped me along the way. Really, both those guys got me into coaching. Didn't know I wanted to coach when I graduated from Bucknell. I knew I loved football, and Dave Legg got me a position at Christopher Newport University in Newport News, Virginia, and that was my first chance to do it and fell in love with coaching. So owe the world to all three of those guys.
In the back right, Tyler.
Hey, how you doing today?
Great.
When we spoke with you at the tail end of spring camp, you gave us a little bit of a reflection on the three-man kicker competition, and you had mentioned that Chase, maybe taking some time to get a little more familiar on the new campus, and then maybe that pacing him a little bit behind the other two. How have you seen him handle the offseason in its entirety, and how would you kind of describe that competition to us now through two practices?
Yeah, so that competition, we're in a really good spot right now. I'm pleased with the first 2 days of camp. Those three guys are really competing, and Chase is right there with them. He's found a groove. The spring was a little bit of a transition for him. He was dealing with some minor injuries, but all three of those guys, I mean, we've got a good problem right now in that room, and we just need them to continue with their consistency through camp, and we'll see what happens in the next couple of days.
In the back center, Zach.
Hey, Coach. Hope you're doing well. What can you say about your options at punt returner? Daquan Hardy provided a lot of spark at the position a season ago. What options are available, and who can you say that stood out in your mind to take over that job?
Sure. We've, I would say Caden Saunders right now is the clear leader in the clubhouse. We showed the team a stat the other day, but there were 199 muffed punts in college football last year. So it starts with catching the football. It starts with having range and not allowing a ball to bounce down the field. And Caden gives us both of those. And I don't mean to discredit his playmaking ability, but he is solid as can be in those first two areas. So he's the clear leader right now. However, we've got some names that pop out that are working back there: Anthony Ivy, Quentin Martin, Josiah Brown, some of the younger guys, Tyseer Denmark, all that have a potential to be dynamic back there as well. So again, a lot of depth, but right now the veteran back there is how we feel is the best move right now.
Back left corner, Andrew.
Coach, back here in the corner, you mentioned, obviously kicker competition, but we saw specialist preseason watch lists come out this week, and Chase was one of those guys who was honored. How does that affect kind of the inner workings of how the guys interact with each other in terms of this competition? As some random people say, okay, Chase is the guy, but you're like, okay, well, we're still open.
Yeah, you'd like to say zero. I mean, it's a competition, and I think specialist, a kicker, for example, is when you're evaluating other positions on offense, defense, quarterback's an obvious one, O-line in any team, there's so much gray, there's so much subjectivity in making those decisions on who's going to be the starter. At place kicker, it's not as difficult. We're charting every kick. So those guys know that. They know that we're going to look at the data and see who's at top, and if it's close, a guy that's a veteran, a guy that we feel like can handle the stress of the situations might get the nod.
Getting a mic here to Rich, right here in the front.
Justin, what are the plans for returning kicks? Is it going to be Nick Singleton again?
Yes, Nick's back there, similar to Caden, a veteran guy. However, again, we've got a good stable of young guys. Wouldn't be surprised to see some other guys back there, but Nick's got the lead right now.
In the back here, Tyler. Let's get Tyler a mic. Aaron's got it.
Thank you. Always like to tap into your other roles with the team too. Talk a little linebacker. Tamir Robinson is somebody that James brought up earlier today as someone who has flashed physically in development. And then we heard some buzz about him in spring ball. Can you tell us what you've seen from his progression as a year two guy? I know you weren't around for his freshman year.
Sure, yeah. That's one of the nice things about being new too, is having a blank slate when you're evaluating personnel on the team. And Tamir has been, number one, he's a guy that's working his tail off, that studies, that wants to be really good. And, you just see him, he's got the length, he's got the athletic ability. In the special teams room, I know you asked defensively, but I think it correlates to defense. The two things we talk about all the time are capability and trust. Like, that's what we're looking for. You got to be capable, and you got to be trustworthy. And he's a guy that fits those two categories. He's long, he can run, he's physical, and he's working his tail off. So I see big things for him on special teams and on defense.
Got time for one more question. Daniel over here on the right.
How you doing, Justin?
Great.
Over the past couple of years, the Penn State punt team has had some good, bullets or gunners on the outside. A couple of those guys have moved on. Who stands out to you from that in that position early on?
Yeah, that's a good question. Again, we've got, I just feel really good about our depth. If you think about all our corners, and the depth in the corner room, I think that was discussed maybe with Coach Allen. That's been a bright spot at camp so far, and really that whole room is working at the bullet position. So you could name any of those guys, from Jalen Kimber to AC to Zion Tracy. All of those guys that we're looking at to step up in those roles.
Thank you very much, Justin. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Everyone will, the bus is outside. Please play nice in the sandbox and share seats on the bus. But you could also walk too. You got plenty of time to walk if you want to walk.